Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third and final webinar in our series, Advancing Tools for Early Career Scholars to Share Their Work. If you want, you can find recordings of all of our webinars in our division's YouTube page. My name is Joey Eisman, and I'm a visiting assistant professor at Purdue University.
Hello, and my name is Martinique Mitchell. I am a postdoctoral researcher and adjunct professor at Virginia Commonwealth University. I co-chair the Division 15 Committee on the Development of Early Career Educational Psychologists alongside Joey, and we're just excited to have you here. With the ECEP, we create opportunities to support the early career scholars, just like this one. So today we're excited to partner with the APA Division 15 Public Outreach Committee to highlight the importance of and avenues for sharing your work with the public, thinking about social media, things like that. So I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists, starting with Dr. Tim Urdan, who is a professor of psychology at UC Santa Clara and is currently serving as the president of Division 15. Much of his research has focused on student motivation and how classroom factors and culture influence the academic motivation of adolescents and early adults. Next, we have Dr. Carlton Fong, who is an associate professor at Texas State University. He studies learner motivation and its sociocultural and instructional determinants in post-secondary contexts with a methodological emphasis on meta-analysis. Next, we have Dr. Taylor Cummings, who is an educational psychologist that studies motivation, belonging, and identity development. Her work challenges dominant narratives in psychology by centering the lived experiences and spiritual realities of individuals navigating institutional harm. Out of her research, she founded The Lab, a third space and think tank Black women, and currently serves as the Director of Research for Future King's STEM Academy and a legislative assistant for the Virginia House of Delegates. And last but not least, we have Dr. Virginia Clinton-Lisell, who's an associate professor in educational foundations and research at the University of North Dakota. She holds a master's degree in teaching English to speakers of other languages from New York University and a doctorate in educational psychology from the University of Minnesota. Dr. Clinton-Lisell's research focuses on digital reading comprehension and open education. She is the primary researcher for the Open Education Group, which provides mentorship and support for early career researchers on open education projects. And you can find her on YouTube and TikTok as Learning Cast. So, we're going to now turn to these panelists to learn more about engaging the public and using public-facing resources to advance your research. So, thank you again for being here. Continue to share who you are, where you're coming from, what you do, and please do drop questions in the chat. If time permits, we will direct your questions to the panelists as well. So, and we can go with the panel in any order, informal. But the first question that we have here, many of us have heard the importance of sharing our work on social media platforms and other public-facing tools. Can you please share with us why you believe that this is important?
Um, can I go first real quick?
Yes.
All right, I'm on the train, so I have stable internet for right now, so I'm going to talk and then I'm going to probably not talk again. First, Joey and Martinique, thanks so much for the work you're doing on ECEP and for these webinars that you're organizing. It's fantastic and really appreciate it. I have no idea what I'm doing on social media, so I uh, just try to avoid it other than sort of being, I think it's called a lurker. I sort of look, but I don't really post. But I do recognize that it's important. It's an important tool for getting information out there. And it seems like an important time to really let people know what are educational psychologists doing in research and practice. And so I wanted to try and get a group of social media. And so this is the first year of our social media public outreach committee. And we have fantastic people in our inaugural group who will talk more than I will today. And just want to let you know that it's happening. And we are always interested in new members who are savvy in social media. So if you're interested in joining the group, send me an email. And we have a proposal that's out there now. If anybody's interested in producing social media, the grant application, and try and get you a little support for that. All right, that's it for me. Thanks again for organizing this.
All right. Should I follow up? Okay. So openness of knowledge and information is just something that is important to me and to my values. I feel like our work can only go so far if it is only available to other researchers and scholars. And one barrier for knowledge is the way that we disseminate our knowledge traditionally. Most people, even if they have access to a research article, probably don't have the skills to appropriately understand and apply the information in a research article. And it's our responsibility, if we're provided funding and support from the public, to let the public know what we found. I also feel like it's essential for combating misinformation online. Yeah, it's not really fair of us to complain about all the scientifically inaccurate information on social media if we aren't putting out a counter narrative, giving people an option for scientifically accurate information.
I would agree. I'm happy to go next. I think the transparency, the openness, the really reducing barriers is very, very, very key. I'd say for me, the main phrase I've been using a lot is epistemic injustice and being able to understand that that's what's happened through the establishment of the academy. And by showing up online, by being more public facing, we're allowing, people to really interrogate what is knowledge, who determines what is knowledge, how we come to know things. And so I love ontology and epistemology, but even just using those words in a public facing setting is like, what are you talking about? So it really forces me as well to just think more practically about knowledge and information and how we're disseminating that, how we're sharing that, and how we're being more inclusive in who's a part of that conversation. And so I find that being online really not only allows people the accessibility and to come inside of our world and what we do here, but also really understanding, how we can just make it a level playing field in terms of misinformation, how to combat that, allowing people to explore their critical thinking skills, especially if they didn't get that in K through 12 or higher education. And I'm also finding a lot of people are just inspired. And it's like, oh, school doesn't have to be what I thought school was. I could do cool work. I could do revolutionary work. I could do innovative work. I could do creative work. I could do arts-based work. And so I think just showing people, other aspects of what the academy is, what scholarship is, what research is, has been really fundamental as well, showing up more publicly.
Yeah, nothing more to really add, but I think just like all the more in times when the pursuit of knowledge itself is maybe under attack, I think all the more our presence online and in social media showing the work that we're doing, showing the value of what we're doing, I think is also a really critical part. And I think modeling critical thinking, modeling civic and civil discourse, I think is also really important too, that we're not just, pushing forth a certain agenda. We're actually like having these evidence-based discussions. And I think of growing importance each day as I look at the news. So.
Thank you all for sharing. And I'm going to pose this question actually back to you, Dr. Fong, but this is open to everyone. I'm just going to ask you to speak first because I think your comment around showing up is really important. And as others have talked about showing up online, talking about I think Dr. Cummings, your language of epistemic injustice, I think that's a wonderful term, and I want to start to consider what are we doing in essence to support the ideas that we have in a way that is encouraging other people to consider, Dr. Fung, as you just said, our critical thinking. So I'm curious, what tools do you use to share? Because my experience and exposure so far is that some social media platforms are internal, they become their own silos. So are we effectively just communicating to ourselves again? And it's essentially just a different format. And if not, what or where do you then find ways to then be those accessible, knowledgeable others?
Ooh, we're starting spicy. Like
Oh yeah.
that's a good question, an important question. And I mean, I think I want to couch everything with also like do what's comfortable for you. And I think everyone has so many different circumstances around the degree and whether they can or should engage. So, we're all in very different geopolitical, sociopolitical, sociocultural situations. And so I think for me, I've kind of drifted more towards LinkedIn. I know it sounds odd for people that created their LinkedIn profiles like 20 years ago to be like, I have a job. And now it's like become this forum for like a lot of academics and practitioners. So that's been interesting. I feel like there's a more positive culture there just because I feel like professionals are on there and like your bosses and stuff are on there. So maybe there's more of like a more of a like civil discourse vibe there. I mean, I think every platform has their different hangups too. I will say, like Tim, I also lurk on other platforms. And I think that's been like to me like a little healthy just to kind of get out of my echo chamber a little bit. And so I think there are more platforms that do lean into other perspectives that I don't personally agree with, but actually still lurking there for me like has just been helpful to be like, oh wow, like there are people who believe very different things from me. Like, let me kind of just understand a little bit of where they're coming from. Um, Once again, not totally saying everyone should do this, but I think for me, it's just been helpful to kind of get a little bit of that vantage point. Um, and so I won't name specific platforms, but I think that's kind of like the approach I've taken. So.
Would anyone else like to share essentially what tools you're using and how you identify the spaces to be to show up?
So I'll add on that I'm not tied to any particular platform. I like to repost my content as much as possible. And yeah, I find that it reaches different audiences, and it also depends on, how much the algorithm picks up the video, how much of a broad audience I'm going to get. But I have gotten comments from people who are not in academia, who appreciated what I had to share, or, commented on it, or maybe argued with me a little bit, and then we had a dialogue. And I haven't found that one platform is like the place to go to. It's pretty easy if you make video content, for example, to just repost to multiple platforms. So that tends to be my approach.
Yeah, I'd also say when deciding the tools, for me, it was more just an organic. Well, one, my students encouraged me to get on TikTok when I was teaching at UNLV. They're like, people need to hear you. And I was like, I do not want to do that. But I did it and it worked out. And so now considering, okay, what does this look like and how do we leverage this? I do think it's about going with what feels most intuitive and what feels most natural to you, because I think that speaks to your sustainability and being able to produce content. But for me, and I also see Dr. Nussbaum, also UNLV, hello. Shout out to Dr. Nussbaum. But thinking about the pros and cons of it, from my perspective, I think TikTok is very easy to grow on. It's you have access. Next thing you know, you post a video, you got 2 million people watching it. And so I think there is, a lot of flexibility with that and who you can reach and how fast it is and how just raw and organic people really are on that platform. They don't really need you to be your super professional self. They really just want to see you in your element, sharing information and knowledge that is helpful for them. And so I think TikTok has been really great. I think there's some changes coming with new ownership and things of that nature to be considerate of. But I also think that Facebook Reels and Instagram Reels are also comparable to that experience. And I think that's also what a lot of social media has been pushing is the Reels. But I'd say ordinarily I'm a more just face to camera, just kind of stream of consciousness type person, just opinions, hot takes, things of that nature. But I also just try to be very, like I said, accessible, but trying to really provide value and what people can save. So if you're thinking about what platforms to go or what you want to do on these platforms, I think the things that have the most success are things that people can share with other people. So either they're like, wow, I haven't thought of this, or this is, they're thinking of someone else to share it with that it might be useful for, or they're saving it to go back and look. So if we're thinking about what tools do I use to share my research and to connect with others, I share a lot of lists like books, like here are some book recommendations. Book recommendations go crazy online, I find. Like a lot of people do like that because that's something that they're looking for. They can save it, they can always come back to it, they can share with other people, different researchers that maybe people aren't aware of. So I also, because of my background and the work that I do, I interrogate a lot of oppressive systems. I deal a lot with the harm that education and religious institutions have caused to the psyche. And so having those discussions, I don't find myself all the time in silos because especially with the religious institutions, you'll have a lot of folks, who want to defend and argue and go back and forth. But I think because we are, knowledge producers and we position ourselves as such, the conversations can be a little more um, civil in that regard because we're not doing it from this place of I'm trying to be right, but more so this is what I found, this is what the research is leading me to understand, and here's some information that may be helpful for you on your journey. So I think always positioning it as that, not being afraid of questions. I know people who may not necessarily be academics who position themselves as thought leaders, they'll start blocking. And I think you do have to block, for your own, sanity and, protecting your peace. So you have to determine what that looks like for you. But I find I only block people if it gets really highly disrespectful, like you find that they're not de-escalating. But if you're just asking questions, if you're generally curious and we come from different schools of thought, I think that that's healthy. And I do accept that and I look for it and I seek that. So I think just generally speaking, things that are going to be helpful for people that they can save, that they can share, that they can refer back to, that really help them think differently about something that they might have already thought about or something that they haven't yet thought about. But for me, it's been primarily TikTok and Instagram, has been the main ways. And then I will also say, as someone who's an emerging scholar, like finished my doc last year, the pressure of like people wanting to like read your dissertation and this and that, and I embargoed mine because I'm working on a few projects. So it was like, okay, what can I give people that kind of gives them a glimpse and a taste of what it is that I'm doing? So I've shared like my dissertation proposal slides with folks. I also recently created a digital product that had 150 plus video lectures on it. It had over 75 plus book recommendations. People could purchase that just as a way of, hey, here's a resource hub of things that have influenced my thinking. And you can kind of go on your own scavenger hunt in terms of exploratory knowledge base. And so those are some of the things that I found useful and also pretty lucrative. I was actually very surprised how well that digital product did online. And so thinking about that as other ways to disseminate information, even if you think about self-publishing and different avenues of getting your work out, because it's like I'm writing a paper with a journal that's probably not going to come out till 2027. So it's like, what can I give people in the meantime has definitely been something I've been thinking about and how I, balance work that is coming solely from me versus work that is coming from and through institutions.
Thank you. So we definitely want to continue to talk about platforms. I know that some of you have mentioned different platforms that you found yourself, but really thinking about kind of what Taylor just mentioned of the content that you're actually posting. Virginia talked about videos. If you're posting about videos, if you're posting about publications, I'm thinking of all the different type of content that ed psych researchers are trying to put out. How do you decide which platform is best? And you've kind of hinted this already. I know Carlton has talked about LinkedIn, Taylor's talked about Instagram and TikTok. Virginia talked about streaming on kind of multiple or reposting to multiple. But do you have any further thoughts or ideas about which platforms is best, depending on the content and the goal of your posting?
So I will jump in to say that I'll be honest, I've stopped posting on Facebook Reels because it was going out to my family and friends, and I was tired of getting feedback from my mom, um, who was not my intended audience. I will post things like I mean she's supportive, but come on. Um, I do post like if I have a new publication, I will do kind of a too long don't read summary of it, and I'll have it publicly available on Facebook and repost for other more text-based sites, and I'll do like a thread of post on Threads or Blue Sky or that sort of thing. I tend to find that TikTok and YouTube tend to have the most outreach, and part of that is just how those systems work, where they seem to be a little more forgiving. I kind of go in spurts of posting, and I my experience is that doesn't work great with Reels, but it does seem to do better on, say, TikTok or YouTube.
I would, oh, sorry,
No,
Dr.
you
Fong,
go,
you
you
can go.
go,
Okay.
you go.
As you were talking, it was making me think about a few other platforms. So, like I mentioned, I've been predominantly on TikTok and YouTube, but I have been using Discord. And so thinking about what the goals and the purpose and the function of you being online is, if it's just to share information, that may look one way, but if it's to build community, that could look differently too. And so thinking about platforms that have capacity for that. And so I find that Discord has been really useful because a lot of people are already on there. So you can have regular chats, you can have voice lounges, you can have video lounges, so you can hop in and just talk with people. I'm also finding Patreon, even before I even had any content on Patreon, I was getting people subscribing over there, and I was like, guys, don't come over here. But it is really useful in terms of having some behind the scenes things. Maybe as you're working on different publications, you can share with a more inner circle community that's on a paid subscription, or if there are some free subscribers that you have over there, you can kind of play with tiers about what you bring people into and what you don't. Substack, I think, is also a good one, probably for academics that I've been playing around just with a little bit. But you can also have different tiers in terms of subscription services, as well as you can go live on there. So you can post videos, you can post images. So there's a lot that you can do, I think, with Substack. And I think there's a lot of folks who are interested in writing and reading people's writing there. So those are some other ones that I've been playing around with, but I think it has a lot to do with what is your overall goal. If I'm just trying to share information, but if you're also trying to build community and be in community with people, finding applications that have the capacity for that, I think are especially useful as well.
Yeah, I just posted on the chat. I should probably do it before I promote it, but I thought that this was just a really cool idea. Um, Jessica Rodriguez did this a couple years ago where there was just different approaches on how to like make your research like a little bit more visually appealing and like kind of a short kind of visual summary. Of course, there's a paywall behind this article, which I love the irony of that. But there's just different ways to like, rather than like a blurb or like kind of bullet points, like could there be like a more visual way to communicate? And I think that often catches the eyes of people, especially on social media. So I think there are some different ways to do that depending on what kind of content you're trying to get out there. But for me, I think LinkedIn, once again, I just feel like I still feel like it's a very more polished site. So I feel like I need to like present like something complete there. It's just my vibe. And then maybe like on a blue sky, I could pose like more of like a half-baked idea or a question, and then get a little bit more traction there in terms of more of a dialogue. Once again, very like rough comparison there. I also want to push this one, not really platform, but like the conversation, I think has been a useful way for like multiple reasons. I think one reason is that it helps me and I think researchers like distill some very like complex and complicated ideas into very like public facing language, and you actually work with a journalist to actually craft the narrative, and so you get heavy edits. sometimes you're like, is this a new paper? But it's often rewritten in a way that really distills the findings and communicates it in a way that's really great for the public. And it's a really great exercise. Like, I think even just working with the editor, I was like, oh yeah, like that word is confusing or that word is kind of dense. And it really helps you, I think, gain a little bit more tools and skills and how to communicate with the public a little better. Um, and so the link I posted was just one that I did, and Virginia I saw just posted one as well. So what is great about it is you get social media attention from the conversation as well, because then they repost it on their platforms, and I think the greatest reach, kind of different from social media but kind of related, is other news outlets will can republish your piece, and so it's on a Creative Commons license. And so like for instance, my article got posted by some big local newspapers like in Houston and San Antonio, right? And so that really got a lot of traction. And one cool story on social media was actually a high school teacher DM'd me about the article that he saw on the conversation, and he was like, "Hey, can I share this with my class, like with my high schoolers?" And I was like, "Yeah, you don't have to ask permission at all. Like, go ahead." And then he did that, and he responded back a week later saying, "My students loved it, and actually, I want to share a redacted version of all their comments about the article with you, just to see their, just so you can read their reflections on the piece," which was super cool. I was like, "Oh my gosh, a real classroom is like engaging with my research." And it all happened through conversation, but ultimately through social media, getting the word out about the research. So that was just a really like full circle experience for me. And then the conversation article somehow got the attention of some curriculum developers. And so they also reached out saying, "Hey, can we use your conversation piece as like a leveled reading excerpt for our curriculum? And it'll be available to like middle schoolers like throughout the nation." And I was like, "Yeah, you don't have to ask permission. Like, go for it. Like, that's super dope." So I wasn't expecting that at all. Like, my university was just like, "Hey, if you're interested, you can meet with a conversation editor and they can help you." And I was like, "Sure." But it really led to all of these ways in which I think the public, in much broader ways, got access to some of the stuff I was working on. So I thought just that was really cool. So I just wanted to plug both of those things. So.
That's very cool. Um, I'm going to get kicked off the train soon, so I just wanted to mention a couple of things. One, kind of in line with um, getting started, is that Division 15 is publishing a blog through Psychology Today. It is plain language, really good practice for those of us that are all trained in academic language to figure out how to put something out there for non-academics. So I do a lot of editing and helping you maybe uh, convert your voice for a non-academic audience, and Martinique is helping with that as well. So that's one fun way to get stuff out there. And then the other thing I wanted to do is just ask a question for you all. You all are experienced social media people. You post, you know how to do it. You've gotten over the fear. There's probably people on this chat like me. They're like, I got my camera in my hand, and I'm like, forget it. Nobody wants to hear from me. Or I don't have a ring light, and I don't have the right makeup and lighting. I'm not going to do it. Can you give some tips for how to just start? How do you just reduce that friction and put your first thing out there? Any tips you have would be most welcome. Taylor's, you start.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think you don't want to hear it, but it's just do it. Like it really truly is at that point. And I'll just speak from my experience. Like I said, my students encouraged me to do it. My first video on TikTok, my screen was cracked, no lighting, no makeup, hoodie on my head, and I was just talking, just rambling for 4 or 5 minutes and it got like 40,000 views. And so I think to me that showed me like, oh, okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. People just, and that's why I think TikTok is one of those platforms where people just want to hear what you have to say. And if they're interested, they're interested. And I think, especially considering who's on this call, if anyone's going to be speaking up, I think it's us right now because so many people are really tired of fake experts or, people who are just grifters or just trying to, make a quick buck through like, oh, join my course or this or that, right? So I think we have a prime opportunity as knowledge producers to come in and just really be able to hold that gap in terms of what knowledge people should be, really investing in and what they should potentially be divesting from. So I will say it really truly is a matter of just getting out there. And I will also just be very transparent that that fear doesn't ever really go away. I think you're sometimes when you get in the flow and you're doing it for a while, you kind of forget about it. But if you do happen to take a little break, or maybe you get a video that doesn't do too well, or maybe the resp it wasn't received as well, you kind of are constantly interrogating that. And I just see it very similar just to the entrepreneurial journey in general, where it really is a battle with yourself and your insecurities and your confidence and how you want to show up and the fear of being seen, the fear of being perceived. So it's a very emotional journey from my experience. I think the last time I spoke with you all, maybe I had about 20,000 followers on TikTok. I think since then I'm almost at 50,000 on TikTok, and my Instagram has grown quite a bit. 'Cause I don't even think I was anywhere near like 10K now. I think I'm around like 11 or so now on Instagram. So I think it's just like the time of just the consistency of just practicing. But I would say even with increased visibility, I start to retreat a little bit and then I have to question, why am I retreating? Why don't I want to be seen? Like I've had some successes here, so I think it really is just like an emotional thing more so than it is really feeling like you're competent or capable enough. It really is, am I okay with people seeing me, witnessing me, hearing what I have to say, and standing in that gap? So I think just generally speaking, it is just a matter of just putting yourself out there, but it is difficult work to do to put yourself out there, but just always staying in tune with what you're doing it for. And so I think that's why it's like, okay, am I doing it? Do I want to be an influencer? Do I want to, have a brand? Do I want to produce, programming? Do I want to be an institution builder? Like, what is the purpose of me being public? And I think that always kind of grounds you in terms of your sustainability and your direction. And so, I think once you start navigating that, it's easier. And I will say for me, it was easier talking to no one than it was talking to like quote unquote followers. It was almost like it was a freedom and like, oh, no one's watching me, no one's paying attention to me. And then it's like, oh, people are listening, people are paying attention, people do actually want to hear what I have to say, and they're checking for me when I'm absent. So now it's like a whole nother level of just who am I? And it's really identity work at the end of the day. I am an autoethnographer, so I deal a lot with knowledge of self and who I am and how I show up. And it's really constantly interrogating that. And I think it's the same with starting a business. It's like, who am I? How am I showing up? And who do I need to be in order to actualize this? And so I think, yeah, you just got to do it, but you always got to just stay in tune with you to kind of know, what things look like for you and how you want to navigate.
If I could just jump in, I will admit I wasn't as brave as Taylor. So, like, my first few videos, I was testing the water. So, I didn't show my face. I did things where I was showing, like, how to take notes. So, I was showing, like, pictures of notes with different trending audios that went with them. And then I got braver and started having my voice, and then eventually, having other kinds of videos. So that was my path, and it's what I felt comfortable with.
And if you really want to dip a pinky toe into this social media universe, um, you could start with kind of more like simple posts like new article, here's a little blurb, some of the social parts of academia. Like I did a little conference recap, like an AERA little slideshow with like photos. I used Canva and it literally took me like 15 minutes. It was like super easy just to drag and drop the photos. And everyone loved that one. That one just got so many likes and reposts, and people like to see, like, I think the real experiences, and so I think photos or like dissertation defenses, like different things that like really show the like human part of being an educational psychologist or researcher, like I think those just people naturally gravitate towards like humanistic content, so like and so honestly, like that's probably like the bulk of what I do, just because I find that to just to be very natural to like share those things. And then as you kind of build up some of those muscles, then you could start maybe venturing into more hot takes, curated lists, more kind of use that as more of a platform. And so for me, I definitely am on like a longer on ramp to that. So
Yeah, and I think it really is a matter of like what you want out of it, you know? And I think like what you were talking about, Dr. Fong, is like you wrote a piece in the conversation and it leads to certain opportunities. If you're sharing certain skills, you know, certain people are going to find you for those things. So if you want to speak on podcasts, or you want to, speak on the news, or you want to do different types of things, kind of figuring out what skills you want to share with folks because that'll attract people. And like you said, you'll get opportunities from places that you weren't even thinking of because people will see you, and the people who are seeking you, they'll find you or their algorithm will show them to you.
I really appreciate Dr. Cummings this idea about, and you've spoken about it several times now, the goal. Am I trying to post something? Am I trying to share an idea? Am I trying to test a concept? Am I trying to create community? These are all very different goals that might require us to be considerate and conscious of the platform we're using. And many of you have also spoken explicitly about this idea of, do I come polished? Do I come prepared? Am I just speaking to a camera? Do I have a ring light? And I'm curious to hear a bit more about how you might leverage public platforms to build visibility, but without compromising your scholarly identity, but also your personal identity. And I'll post the question in the chat, but this really comes from this notion that sometimes people get either pegged or noted as a specific type of researcher that may not be true, or maybe you become part of you're being perceived as being cavalier about something, which also may not be true because of the way that social media requires us to reduce language. So I'm curious, how do you go about being as you were saying, the complex human, and Dr. Fong, your language of this, like just being we're humanistic and humans, but trying to have this persona as well. I'm going to ask Dr. Cummings if you don't mind starting, because you were talking explicitly about this idea of being polished or not.
Yes, I think from my perspective, I'm someone who deals a lot with deconstruction, decolonizing, anti-racism. So if we're dealing with notions of professionalism, how that can be marginalizing, how that can be limiting, and things of that nature. So for me, it's authenticity, and I think I don't have at this moment a job within a traditional academic institution. I'm not working at a university, so there may be some differences there in terms of how you show up or how you don't show up. But I also haven't had an experience. Actually, recently I did have an experience. I was up for a position with the governor's cabinet, and they said that I would not be able to do social media. I would not be able to have a business or an organization. By Dr. Urdan. I wouldn't be able to have any of those things if I wanted to move forward with this position. And so that was a very real choice I had to make. Okay, do I want to give up this organization I made? We have over 750 women signed up across 3 continents, which started from a TikTok, and we took us to AERA. I saw Dr. Eisman there. We were presenting, we're doing real scholarship based on this, social media platform. Do I want to give up my business? I started the self-love doc, educational and psychological consulting. Do I want to give up, this momentum I have online? And so for me, it was like, okay, checking in with my values, in terms of who I am, what I actually want to do. Are my values to be a politician? I don't think so overall. And so really, like I said, also leaning into like this teacherpreneur lane that I think a lot of us are being pushed into because of the limitations of higher education right now, the limitations on funding and just job opportunities that there are. It really just, I made the choice to bet on myself. And so I've seen a lot come from that. But I think for me, it's just a matter of like, who am I? Who am I proud to be? Am I okay with this going on the big screen in front of whoever might see it? I think those are some questions that I had to ask myself and just think about who I am and also being okay with the growth. Like you have a internet, what is the word? Your trail is there, right? Your footprint, your digital footprint, right? It's you can't delete it. Even if you delete it, it's still always there. So I think being mindful of that, but not allowing it to be fear mongering or shaming you. And so I think it's a matter of understanding like, okay, you can track someone's growth, you can track someone's evolution. I'm allowed to change my mind. I think those are things that have been very important, but just thinking wholly about identity and values and does that align with the direction and the path that I see for myself? And if there are situations where someone's saying, hey, what you do or what you say is in alignment with us, I have to be able to respect that. And so I think for me, it's just been a matter of, am I going to be whole? Am I going to be happy? Really? Am I going to be, proud and content with the work that I'm doing? And I'm seeing that there has just been so much positive work that has come through me showing up in this way. Even if I haven't felt like I've shown up as fully as I can at this moment, the work that I've done thus far, like I'm very, very pleased with. And so I think to be able to continue on that journey, I would like to do that. So I think it's just really identity, values, and coming to those decisions for yourself about what that looks like for you. But
One thing
there's a lot of folks doing really great work with huge platforms out there, and so I think it's definitely possible.
Before we open it back up to everyone, I'm going to come back to you, Dr. Cummings, for a quick follow-up. So I really appreciate this idea that, especially as someone who's doing critical work, who maybe is trying to be more consistent with your value systems and essentially aligning with who you are trying to be and who you want to be. I love that, and I think that's really important. I've seen researchers who have conducted critical work who have essentially disregarded the entire research project because of fear of being doxxed, canceled, disregarded, discredited as a researcher, or for fear of retaliation from real concerning individuals. Do you ever have those fears? And if yes, what does it look like, and how do you, once again, reconcile the platform version of who you are versus and the scholar,
Yeah.
entrepreneur, individual, etc.?
I think I've been grateful that when people do meet me in person, they've been able to say she is who she says she is.
Mhm.
I saw her on this podcast. I saw her online. I saw her on TikTok. I witnessed her. I met her in real life. I watched her speak, or I just happened to run into her. And you are who you are. And so I've been grateful to be able to have that experience. And I think that's the cohesion that I think a lot of us are looking for. And that's your professional life, your personal life. What are the ways in which you can merge and you're being your true self? And so that's a lot of what my work is about, is being your true self and how that manifests across contexts. But I think I haven't been afraid of it. I think I have been afraid of backlash. I've been afraid of, okay, maybe this isn't going to go over well. I do know the harm where people have been, trying to out people, dox people, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it is about your approach. And I think if you come in humble to the knowledge and the work and be respectful, and like I said, I've had people disrespect me. I've had crazy things said about me in the comments, but I think overall people understand my heart and I think what the purpose of us being here is. And so like I said, maybe I'm not big enough for that yet. And maybe, when you get to certain levels, like things change. But I think where I am right now, it's been very, very, very positive, overwhelmingly. And so I'm grateful for that. And I talk about very controversial topics. Like I said, I deal with religious and educational institutions and the harm that they cause and how we deconstruct from that. And so those are very sensitive, controversial issues. And it's been very, very positive for me. So I deal, and the more I get my workout for y'all to read, it really has a lot to do with breaking down those fear-based thought patterns and those limiting self-beliefs and things of that nature. So I haven't yet experienced that, but maybe we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there.
I hope you never will. Dr. Fong or Dr. Clinton-Lisell, do you have any thoughts on this issue of identity and scholarship and platforms?
I just have something silly to add, which what is sometimes they create like these different like I don't know what they're called, like applets that you can like have them analyze your posts and your interactions, and then it gives you like a summary of who you are. I think it's like blue sky roast or like whatever, like these different things that like they use AI. So not commenting on that, but they use AI to like use like all like your posts. I think I did that once and it said like your posts are about building a supportive community in ed psych and dad jokes or something like that or something. And I was like, okay, like that's useful feedback to know that like at least I'm trying to be someone who I feel comfortable being. And so I don't know, just one silly note if you want like some sort of analysis of like what type of identity you might be portraying to others or at least to AI or something. Anyways, nothing substantive, just a little comedic relief, hopefully.
If I could add just really quickly, because I think it speaks to like brand identity as well. So like if you're showing up online, and I think it goes back to the purpose and the function of you being online. What are you trying to do? Or do you have your own business? Are you like what are you trying to promote? It's really a marketing tool these days in that a lot of ways. And so I think when you think about who you are, I think that's also a tension that I've been really working through is like, okay, who I am as an individual, who I am as a brand, who I am as a scholar, how those things show up. And I think that that's very different too. And I think it's aligned, like I said, with the entrepreneurial path in terms of like how you're building your ecosystem to be sustainable for you. And so I think thinking through those things could be really useful in terms of brand development or just business identity. Or if you're using it to promote your institution, your university as well. So there's a lot of that going on as well. It could be useful. People want to take your class because they see you online. And it's like you have a whole line waiting to come to your class, you know. So that could be good marketing as well for your university or your program or your department.
I did have someone ask me to be on their committee based on my YouTube videos.
Yeah, I've got dissertation coaching clients through that. I've got all types of stuff, you know. So I think people will find you, you know, if you're providing value and they see the value in you that maybe you don't get that same recognition in your personal or professional life.
Okay, we have one more question that we just wanted to ask, which is how do you measure the impact of your public scholarship beyond likes and shares?
Oh, I'll let you
Oh,
go
see, I don't
ahead.
mind starting. If you have something, you can go.
Okay, I was just gonna say, what I find to be the most powerful is the personal stories and connections that I'm able to build from it, and having people, find out things about that, maybe more of my personal identity, but be excited to find out I got promoted or whatever else I'm posting about online, or that somebody emailed me and said that they found my video about being tenure track and a single mother. They found it inspirational and they really appreciated it because of their own life path. And the I guess that's where I really see the biggest impact because, really my most popular videos are tend to be my silliest videos. They're not really the most like meaningful or adding great value to the world. They're just me having fun. So, anyway.
Yeah, I could try to bring in some yeah, just some practical things as well. Like I've done like a section on my CV that has like popular press or like media mentions and things like that. And so I try to document as much as I can there. I think also, whenever there's either application or a narrative associated with like tenure or promotion, if you're thinking like academic track, like there's always a question or a prompt about like what is the impact, right? Like what is the impact of your work? And you can write a little blurb saying, these are ways in which I've engaged the public, and these are kind of numbers, right, associated with it, whether it's reads on my conversation piece, whether it's, altmetric on my articles, right? Altmetric is like ways in which a published article has been, disseminated through different social media or news platforms. And so I think there are ways to try to get at some of the numbers, but I do agree with Virginia. Like, I think telling the story, I think, is also just really powerful. And I think there are ways to do that through different like exhibits and stuff like that to try to document it. It is challenging. I don't think academia is quite ready to like really embrace how social media can disseminate work, but I think they're open to those things, and when they see those, it does provide like compelling evidence for that. So
Yeah, I would say I agree. Having a section on the CV, I think that still relates, to the numbers and things, but being able to say, okay, this is what some of the ideas that I've had, has the attention that it's garnered, or the conversations it's facilitated, the impact it's had, I think through the stories, those have been very incredible. Like the DMs you get, the messages, the comments, as well as, like I said, just the personal interactions when you do meet people in person, just being able to hear how what they've seen from you has impacted them, I think is incredible. And then I'd also say just different opportunities that arise. Like I was featured in the Rolling Stone. I got an interview with them. I got a quote in there from a TikTok video. It's like Rolling Stone would have never called me any other way, but it's through those types of opportunities. And even just bringing the public to the academy. We actually just got a paper accepted with the educational and developmental psychologists, Dr. Kelly and Allen and Dr. DeLeon Gray are co-editors, and I'm going to be co-authoring a paper with a podcast host. And so really talking about the barriers to education, the barriers to intelligence and anti-intellectualism, and just understanding how researchers often use a whole lot of words to say a whole lot of nothing, and how they make people feel not so smart and things of that nature. So really just going through the tensions and what those belonging blind spots are. So there's an organic intellectual special issue. And so this is a man who started a business, started his TikTok from a truck as a trucker, and now has over 1 million viewership, and so understanding how he's been able to bring a lot of important conversations to the Black community, but then how, I was a guest on that podcast, and so now we're talking about how those worlds, collide and what that looks like. And so I think someone who never went to college having a peer-reviewed publication is really, really cool. And so I think that that can demonstrate a lot of the impact that we can have and how we can bring what we do directly to the people. And so I think that's a very prime and recent example of what, my internet presence has been able to do, across just these educational lines.
Thank you each for sharing and talking about that last final question. So before we conclude, I did want to just reiterate something that Dr. Urdan mentioned at the start of the call, which is the Psychology Today blog that APA Division 15 has. I really encourage you, if you're not familiar with the blog, to kind of look through what are already there, how they're written. But I think this is, at least for me, I know he mentioned that I have been like sorting through them with him. It has been a challenge because I'm so used to academic writing, peer review, and I want to say, where are your references and this, that, and the third. And it is a very different audience. You definitely still want to have psychology because it is Psychology Today, and then you want to have an education focus. So those are the two main requirements. But the audience, you're not going to be able to just use words like, SDT and think they're going to just say, "Oh yeah, we got you." You have to be very clear. I think that's some of the biggest feedback that's given is, this is too much jargon. Can you put this in layman's terms? What is really the point or the purpose here? And so I think, especially if you have a publication or some data that you just found, this is a different sort of opportunity to think of, okay, what is a different way for me to talk about what I'm finding or what I'm seeing that's not just promoting my article, that's not just promoting my lab, that's not just, using academic terminology, but is actually, could be useful for other people in the field of psychology or in education. Um, And this is online. So I think that was a question Joey asked earlier about, how is this different from journal articles, the Psychology Today blog, social media. These are things that someone could ideally just get a link and see it for free. So, it has that aspect about it. So, again, we just want to really take the time to thank our panelists. If we could just show hands, clap, love. Thank you so much to our panelists. They have been so incredible for sharing their insights and advice, links, translating research to practice. And we hope to see you in DC at the annual meeting. We will keep you in touch about other ECEP events that we'll be having there on site. And we'll make sure to send out the YouTube link for this video. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to Joey or myself. And thank you for joining us. That was so great.